This is Plant-Based Briefing, How Heavy is Your Food's Carbon Footprint? By Dr. Michael Greger at nutritionfacts.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate articles on healthy, compassionate, and sustainable living with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. Think of it as your daily dose of inspiration to stay the course with this lifestyle. So now let's get to today's Plant-Based Briefing. How Heavy is Your Food's Carbon Footprint? By Dr. Michael Greger at nutritionfacts.org. How much greenhouse gas does the production of different foods cause, measured in miles driven or light bulb hour equivalents? Our eating habits are making us and the planet increasingly unhealthy. It's a lose-lose situation. A global transformation of the food system is urgently needed. In considering the mounting evidence regarding the environmental effects of foods, in 2015, the U.S. Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee included for the first time a chapter focused on food safety and sustainability. It concluded that a dietary pattern that is higher in plant-based foods such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and lower in animal-based foods is more health-promoting and is associated with lesser environmental impact than is the current average U.S. diet. However, unsurprisingly, despite unprecedented public support, this and other sustainability language were not included in the final 2015-20 dietary guidelines published by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The U.S. dietary guidelines didn't even sufficiently stick to the science of healthy eating either. Many national dietary guidelines do not reflect this evidence on healthy eating and include no or too lax limits for animal source foods, particularly meat and dairy, despite an opposing evidence base. Even if it completely ignored planetary health and just stuck to the latest evidence on healthy eating, it would have knock-on environmental benefits. Replacing animal-sourced foods with plant-based ones would not only improve nutrition and help people live longer, but it could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by up to 84%. In general, plant-based foods cause fewer adverse environmental effects by nearly any measure. In terms of carbon footprint, all the foods that are the equivalent of driving more than a mile per 4 ounces served are animal products. In the chart below, you can see the greenhouse gas emissions from various foods. Even though something like a lamb chop or farmed fish may be the worst, eating chicken causes about 5 times the global warming than tropical fruit, for instance. What are the climate superstars? Legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. For example, in the United States, substituting beans for beef at the national level could deliver up to 75% of the 2020 greenhouse gas reduction target and spare an area of land 1.5 times the size of California, not to mention the health benefits. And it isn't just greenhouse gases. To produce 1 kilogram of protein from kidney beans required approximately 18 times less land, 10 times less water, 9 times less fuel, 12 times less fertilizer, and 10 times less pesticide in comparison to producing 1 kilogram of protein from beef. So yes, according to the prestigious Eat Lancet Commission, more plant-based may be better, but even a shift towards a dietary pattern emphasizing whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes without necessarily becoming a strict vegan will be beneficial. In Europe, for example, researchers found that just halving the consumption of meat, dairy products, and eggs in the European Union would achieve a 40% reduction in nitrogen emissions, 25 to 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and 23% per capita less use of cropland for food production. In addition, the dietary changes would also lower health risks, reducing cardiovascular mortality, which is Europe's leading cause of death. However, minimizing environmental impacts does not necessarily maximize human health. Yes, animal products, including dairy, eggs, fish, and other meat, release significantly more greenhouse gas per serving than foods from plants, but eating added sugar and oil won't do your body any favors. In California, including more animal products in your diet requires an additional 10,000 quarts of water each week, so that's like taking 150 more showers in 7 days. Skipping meat just on weekdays could conserve thousands of gallons of water a week compared to eating meat every day, as well as cut your daily carbon footprint and total ecological footprint by about 40%. Some countries are actually doing something about it. For example, the Chinese government has outlined a plan to reduce its citizens' meat consumption by 50%, whereas much of the rest of the world appears to be doing the complete opposite, pumping billions of taxpayer dollars into subsidizing the meat, dairy, and egg industries. We can certainly all try to do our part. However, an obstacle to dietary change may be that consumers underestimate the environmental impacts of different types of foods. Labeling may help. For example, imagine picking up a can of beef noodle soup and seeing the image below. The image shows that the carbon footprint of a single half-cup serving of beef noodle soup is like leaving on a light for 39 hours straight, and not an eco bulb, but an old-school 100-watt incandescent bulb. Compare that to eating a meat-free vegetable soup. Between the two, there's a difference of 34 light bulb hours. You can imagine someone getting on your case for unnecessarily leaving on a light for 34 minutes, but this is 34 hours wasted just from eating a half cup of a meaty soup rather than a meat-free vegetable soup. Summary. The current dietary patterns, especially in the United States, are contributing to both poor health and environmental degradation. A shift towards plant-based diets is recommended for better health and reduced environmental impact. Despite scientific evidence supporting plant-based diets for health and environmental benefits, the 2015 to 20 U.S. dietary guidelines did not fully incorporate sustainability considerations or strong limits on animal-based foods. Plant-based foods generally have a lower environmental impact compared to animal products. Replacing animal-sourced foods with plant-based alternatives could significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions and resource usage. Some countries like China are actively promoting reduced meat consumption to benefit health and the environment. In contrast, other regions continue to heavily subsidize the meat and dairy industries. And many consumers are unaware of the environmental impacts of different foods. Clear labeling, such as indicating the carbon footprint of products, could help inform better dietary choices and promote sustainability. You just listened to How Heavy is Your Food's Carbon Footprint by Dr. Michael Greger at nutritionfacts.org, and I'm your host, Marian Erickson. And I've done a ton of other episodes about the inefficiency of animal agriculture and its impact on climate change. I'll link 2 of them in the show notes. 379, The Significant Unalloyed Goodness of Replacing Animal Agriculture by Dr. Kartik Shaker, and 171, Technical Outrage, Innovation to Reduce Animal Use by the same author. So feel free to check those out, and please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.